As a teacher, calling out in the classroom is a massive behaviour problem. Not only for the child who's calling out, because other children tend to behave negatively towards them, but also for the other children who don't get a chance to answer the question. They don't even start bothering putting up their hands at all. They know the answer, but just never get a chance to answer the question. We need to stop the behaviour from the child. But it's no use getting mad at the child. There's no use telling the child off. There's no use giving them constant warnings or stacking up consequences on them, removing them from the group, giving them time out, or even repeating the same techniques over and over again without them even working. These aren't going to help the child stop the behaviour. What needs to be done is a functional analysis. And whenever functional analyses are done for these sorts of behaviour, it usually proves that the child just wants attention. So what we need to do is a technique, behavioural modification technique called differential reinforcement using alternative behaviour. Now what that effectively means is we want them to do an alternative behaviour from calling out. Now the most obvious thing is we want them to put up their hand instead of just calling out. So we can't just say to Johnny, can you put up your hand before you, to answer the question, because Johnny's not going to do that. Because then Johnny's not going to be able to show how much he knows, because other children are going to get their name called out before him. So we have to do something to help motivate Johnny to put up his hand. So what I personally would do is I'd pull little Johnny to the side and I'd have a conversation with him. I'd talk to him about how calling out affects the other children in the class, because they don't get to answer the questions. They don't get to show that they know the answer as well, because Johnny's always calling out and calling out the answers before they get a chance. So it's not fair on them. Make him see things from other people's perspectives, because sometimes children don't understand others because they're always looking at things from their point of view. When I've done this, I would then try and work out a way between the two of us that would motivate him to put up his hand. It would be some sort of a reinforcer. Now the reinforcer has to be something that's going to motivate him to want to put up his hand. Usually this sort of works out like a sticker system or stamp system, where if he earns so many stamps, he'll get some sort of a reward. Now these rewards could be if you get 5 stamps or 10 stamps or stickers, you get to sit in a special chair when we are reading a book. If you get the same amount of stickers or stamps, you get to play with a special toy when we have free time. You get to take the teacher's ball out to the playground. It could be anything like this, as long as it comes from the child, because it's the child's reinforcer, not yours. So this is usually what it's about. It's about attention. So what was happening before is, it was the antecedent, which was the teacher asked a question. There was the behaviour where little Johnny called out, and the consequence was that he got the attention he wanted. So now what we're trying to do is, the teacher asks a question, little Johnny puts up his hand, and he gets rewarded with the reinforcer because the teacher is still giving him the attention, and he's getting reinforced with that as well. So, because what actually happens is children, as I said before, the children want attention. So it can be negative and it can be positive. So they don't care. So what we're trying to do is give him positive reinforcement for a positive behaviour, an alternative behaviour to the problem behaviour he was exhibiting before. This reinforcement has to happen immediately and has to be consistent. So what we would do in a classroom situation is, if I was asking a question such as a math question, 5 plus 5, little Johnny's going to want to call out, but he knows that if he puts up his hand, he's got a better chance of being able to answer the question. 5 children put up their hand. I don't choose little Johnny, I choose Sarah. Little Johnny's going to get a bit upset, but I see that little Johnny's put up his hand and I'll say, excellent work, Johnny. When we go back to the tables, you can put a sticker on the chart. Sarah, what's the answer? And Johnny's got the attention, got the reinforcer, and he's learned that he's put up his hand, he's done the right thing. He hasn't called out, so he hasn't partaken in his problem behaviour, and his alternate behaviour has worked. This is what we want to see. We want to make sure this is consistent. It's not going to be perfect all the time. We are going to have what's called an extinction burst, and that's where his old behaviours will come back. It's just the natural thing that happens when we try to extinguish a big problem behaviour. As long as we don't reinforce that behaviour at all, it will go away again. Now, with this alternate behaviour, we might need to make sure that any teachers which have contact with little Johnny don't let him call out, that they're reinforcing the alternative behaviour as well. Even if they write on a piece of paper, little Johnny needs to get 3 stamps because he put up his hand 3 times. And they also need to ignore if he calls out. So it needs to be consistent. Now, a teacher always has to be enthusiastic and motivating towards the children. That's what teachers have to be. They could have the worst day ever, but they're actors. They need to act for these children and be happy and motivated. Children don't like seeing sad faces. Everyone has a bad day, but we've got to try and push those bad days away to be there for our children, our students. Punishment such as putting children in timeout doesn't work. You have to try every other way or reinforcement behaviour technique that you can possibly do, and only go to punishment if it's absolutely necessary, if nothing else works, and if you are positive that the punishment has a future probability of that behaviour declining. So the idea is, don't send them outside the classroom. Don't put them in the corner unless you're 100% sure that the behaviour will decrease. Try everything else first. All right, happy teaching. I hope this was helpful to you, and goodbye.